You might get Xenoblade Cross, but not Xenoblade Cross. Does that make sense to you? If not, this video will explain what I mean by that.
Hello there.
The Switch is 7 years at this point, and those 7 years we were treated to a lot of really good games, and believe it or not, a lot of them were actually ports from the Wii U. I mean, the most successful Switch game is a Wii U port, with a staggering 60 million plus sold. And if you hear people talk about more games coming to the Switch, there is something that many people are mentioning every time.
Xenoblade Chronicles X.
Now it's time to talk about one of my absolute favorite Wii U games, Xenoblade Chronicles X.
It's a big one. Xenoblade Chronicles Cross.
Now, Xenoblade Chronicles X is...
We've got Xenoblade Chronicles, we've got Xenoblade Chronicles 2, we've got Xenoblade Chronicles 3, yet we don't have Xenoblade Chronicles X. What's up with that?
Don't you think it's a bit weird that this game has been ignored all this time, and not just by gamers themselves, but also Monolith Soft? The developers behind all the Xenoblade games, to the point where they even don't mention it when talking about games they developed in the past. Why is Xenoblade Cross ignored even to that extent? Why can't they just simply port it over? There's something you probably didn't know. Even multiple things at that. The few people who actually played the game, finally including myself, together with a fellow Xeno creator called JBspherefreak, know the reason why this game isn't ready just yet. Let's dive into it.
You probably weren't expecting a video like this one when reading the title Never Played Xenoblade X, but the point of this video is the same. We're assuming that most of you haven't played X because, let's face it, it's not exactly the most accessible game to play in 2024, being locked to a console that at this point would be considered ancient. In fact, this is the only Xeno title produced by Takahashi that hasn't sold 1 million copies. Let that sink in for a moment. Even so, for the purpose of this video, we will be assuming that you have played all of the other Xeno games, ranging from Xenoblade 1 to 3, including their expansions. So if you're still trying to avoid spoilers for the other titles, go check out this video later, as we'll be going over all of them throughout this video, for the sake of helping you understand exactly what puts X in such a strange space. For those of you that are still sticking with us, allow me to clarify on that previous point. Imagine that the original Xenoblade Chronicles removed Shulk halfway through development, replacing him with a new character that had no backstory, no history, no character development, and no character arcs. Remember the Egil boss fight in Galahad Fortress? Well, that's actually where the game now ends, leaving you on the cliffhanger of what happened to the group and the rest of the Bionis' inhabitants, and wondering if we were able to save Fiora. Don't worry though, there's plenty of side content for you to do, with a variety of quests hinting at the truth behind the High Entia, a closer look at the advanced technology that they possess, and even details towards their transformations into Telethia. But here's the twist. All of that stuff is never actually confirmed, more so implied, and left for you as a fan to piece the picture together, like a jigsaw, except that only half of the pieces fit together, whilst the others remain enigmas. To top it all off, during the game's post-credit scene, we get a glance of the orbital station and hear the words,
"Ridiculous! It's perfectly safe!"
echoing in the background, becoming the very last moment of this story. This is Xenoblade X. This is exactly how the story of X is written within its current state. This absolute mess of piling garbage that is quite literally half completed is Xenoblade X, and it's all thanks to the terrible development cycle that this game received. Of course, there are positives as well. This game has a beautiful open world that's seamless between its regions. Exploration is a joy thanks to the addition of skells, allowing us to traverse in style across Mira, and the icing on the cake is the gameplay and combat systems, arguably the best in the series, and in my opinion, by far the most innovative with its overdrive function and thought-provoking quests alike. It's no surprise that most OG fans, or the 6 of you who actually played this game back in the day, felt as if this game was far more action-focused than its predecessor, changing the formula of Xenoblade games like what Breath of the Wild did for Zelda. And whilst we understand why you might feel that way, that's actually not the case. Or it wasn't the case. So without further ado, let's jump right into it.
Of course it makes still for an overall very good game. That is a must play. This game also has some of the best side quests in the entire series, but you're noticing that there is a bit missing. Though a bit is quite an understatement. You see, there is quite a rabbit hole that we can go into when it comes to Xenoblade Cross and what it was supposed to be and eventually happened. I was always someone who was 100% sure that the game would receive a port. Why shouldn't it? Everything else from the Wii U got ported too, no? But now that I myself have finished the game as well not too long ago, and also me getting deeper and deeper into what the game was supposed to be, I'm not sure what Monolith Soft, or should we say Tetsuya Takahashi, have in mind. The person behind Xenogears, the first Xeno Saga, and now all the Blade games. Monolith Soft was founded by Tetsuya Takahashi, and he is the person in the development of Xenoblade Chronicles who has served as a director, lead writer, and executive director. And when he was cooking up the story of Cross, and I would like to quote Ko Kojima, who is game designer and director on Xenoblade Cross, in the book Iwata asks, he says, "Come to think of it, Takahashi-san wrote a lot. I've worked with Takahashi-san for a long time, but this was the first time I've seen him write so much for a game's plot. It was as if he was writing a novel." And it makes sense. He was working with him ever since the first Xeno Saga, so hearing that from him is quite a big deal. The game was supposed to be a big deal. It was the first game in HD, with it also being their first true open world game. Takahashi said that they wanted to create a whole planet for this game, and then later also from Genki Yokota, who is another Xenoblade director, that they even had multiple planets in mind later on, to which you can freely travel to. Though for multiple reasons, including also the fact that they have barely gotten the game on a single disc, almost considering shipping the game on 2 discs because of how big it was, and the very limiting hardware of the Wii U, yeah, they scrapped it. But even then, Xenoblade Cross is still one of the biggest open world games ever made. An article from March 16 in 2024, this year, it is mentioned that it's currently on the 20th place right under games like Final Fantasy XV, Death Stranding, and Just Cause 3 and 4, and above games like The Witcher 3, Assassin's Creed Black Flag, and Arma 3, which makes it the biggest Nintendo world ever created. All of that is mighty impressive.
But why was so much of the narrative scrapped in the first place? Especially to a degree where this can barely be described as a story-focused game anymore. Or your initial reaction may be to simply blame Nintendo for the changes, but it's not as simple as all that. Of course, it's very likely that Satoru Iwata and the other executives at Nintendo would have insisted that the game be online compatible due to the sheer amount of promotion for the console's Miiverse features and the like, with Takahashi even stating, "We were able to implement online elements by cooperating with Nintendo." But this isn't enough to outright condemn them, especially when Takahashi has also commented previously on wanting to make a game with online functionality. In fact, another quote from Genki Yokota from the Iwata Asks book says, "In the middle of development, we decided to make it compatible with online play, so we had a mass construction to change the main character into an avatar avatar and rewrite some of the story to match with the content. Then Takahashi himself added, "We changed the main protagonist to an avatar and had to abandon many of the things we had built up to that point." Even the Art of Mira artbook has a dedicated section to spoilers, containing an immense amount of cut content, including many instances where certain keywords have quite literally been redacted with a black bar, ensuring the secrets they hide remain hidden.
Like those SCP stories with a lot of infos you're not supposed to know. Exactly like that. I love those stories.
Yeah, that sure is curious. During an interview in 2017 on Xenoblade 2 within the Time magazine, Takahashi mentioned that the development for X was rather difficult, insinuating that this is the reason that the game came out so late in the Wii U's life cycle, throughout 2015. What's more, keep in mind that Xenoblade 2 released in the December of 2017, just 2 years after X, but the plot thickens. As it turns out, Xenoblade Chronicles 2's development actually started around July of 2014, which is normal for AAA game developers, although for a company of only around 130 employees at the time, split between 2 studios and working on a variety of other projects for Nintendo, this is still a bit unusual. Nonetheless, the devs still decided to go forward with this new game direction, cutting many elements of the old game that they could reuse for a sequel that they already had in mind. But doing all of this a couple of years or so before the release of the game you're currently working on isn't exactly what you'd expect. But then again, perhaps Monolith Soft is just built differently.
And there's a small theory that I came up with, which would leave me with 2 possible ways on how things will turn out in the future, but I will talk about these 2 ways in a moment. Once again, I won't go into any spoilers that are connected to the story you have gotten in Cross. I will try to tell you what the game was supposed to be originally, and what the ideas they had that could still be relevant for future games. Or already were relevant, but are cut here in this game. And you will probably notice yourself what 2 ways I mean, including what I meant with that very first sentence I said in this video. You saw the planet on the thumbnail, right? That is supposed to be Mura from early concept art. And there is something that may remind you of something from 2. A building that is stretching into the stratosphere and even higher. Also, with that deep hole around that building, you probably made the connection to the World Tree from 2. And you may be right. And that leads into one of my theories for how Cross may be treated. The game receiving an uplift is 100% happening. It will absolutely happen eventually. Michihiko Inaba, one of the Xenoblade devs, said, "I would like to make an HD game that will wow the players. I want to show that Japan can still keep up with the USA when it comes to next-gen technology. Our goal is to become something like the developers of the Fallout series, Bethesda Softworks." Well, that goal becoming like them must have changed, I'm sure. Another dev called Hirohide Sugiura said that the Japanese gaming industry has lost its touch, and that they want to change that. Granted, these interviews are from December 2012, but looking at them nowadays, they are one of, if not Nintendo's best development team. They had been working on Zelda since Skyward Sword, also helping create the overworld that you know in Breath of the Wild, including also working on IPs like Splatoon, Animal Crossing, and even more. They sure made themselves a name, and looking at Xenoblade 3 and Future Redeemed, considering how ancient the Switch is at this point, it is nothing short of a miracle. Simply impressive stuff. But going back to Cross, why wasn't the game brought over from the Wii U to the Switch then? Well, there are multiple points we have to discuss here. You heard what kind of an impressive game Cross is, right? I want to remind you, once again, that the game was running on a Wii U. This console had 2 GB of DDR3 RAM, and 1 GB was already used for the system itself. That's not much, like, at all. with an internal flash memory of 8GB in the basic set and a memory bandwidth of 12.8GB per second, which is, once again, not that much. The size of Xenoblade Cross itself is 22.7GB to download it completely. The deluxe version of the Wii U had 32GB of internal flash memory, with 25GB being usable, so this one game could fill up your Wii U completely, if bought digitally. Xenoblade 3 in comparison is 15GB. Some words on 3's development will come in a moment. You're maybe noticing where I'm going here. The CPU being a 3-core processor that runs at just 1.24 GHz per core, which is compared to the 3.2 GHz of the competitors Xbox 360 and PS3, rather low. The GPU, even though it wasn't the newest hot stuff, definitely held the Wii U afloat and carried the system to give you games that were way better looking than on the Wii, which made it feel like a real generational jump over the system before. They also created a whole new engine for Cross, which was also used for every other entry in the future. They simply kept on modifying and improving said engine, but there's a small issue. It really was ahead of its time.
At release, the game had few technical issues, aside from the occasional frame drops and hiccups here and there, but for the most part, it was a stable, enjoyable experience. Wish the same could be said for Xenoblade 2's release, the absolute train wreck that was. The largest sacrifices could be seen through the game's visual quality, primarily due to pop-in, which could range from being mildly annoying to rather extreme, and it gets even worse once you get your hands on a Skell. Loading times skyrocket as loading zones between areas become incredibly noticeable, forcing the game to run at 120% capacity, leading to NPCs and enemies alike appearing multiple seconds after they should have. Textures also will only switch to their higher quality variants when standing right in front of whatever it is you're looking at, and shadows don't even move despite there being an active day and night cycle. The devs did try to optimize this game as much as possible, even going as far to remove any collision between the cars and people within New LA to save on resources and have the game run as optimally as possible. I've mentioned on my channel a few times just how patched together this game really is on the Wii U, and why a straightforward port to the Nintendo Switch isn't really feasible. I mean, this game literally needed a DLC patch that had to be manually installed to make it run smoother on the Wii U, which just doesn't happen in this day and age. In terms of specs, the Switch isn't that much of a jump from what the Wii U is capable of, likely meaning that all of the issues we've just described and explained are likely to be present if the game ever made its way to the Switch, which, let's face it, at this point is never going to happen. You've probably heard the complaints that the Switch Xeno games look too anime, but there is a reason for it. The Switch, lacking in power as it is, tends to utilize a more stylized art style for its first-party titles, which many could say looks anime-ish, but this is all done for the purpose of optimizing these games on the console, so considering that X has a comparatively more realistic-looking art style, reinforcing the darker undertones of the game's quests and story missions, we're left in a sticky situation of where we abandon the artistic direction or the performance of the game suffers all the more for it. Xenoblade 3 in fact is a great example as to the lengths that Monolith has to go to make their games even remotely playable on this dinosaur of a console. According to various sources, the devs encountered many performance issues when making the game, attempting to accommodate a larger party size with 7+ characters on screen at once, whilst also having the goal to drastically reduce pop-in by having the most monsters on screen at once than ever before. Even so, despite all of their hard work, the game still has a multitude of visible graphical compromises, most famously including the grass pop-in at areas like Millick Meadows, although this has since been fixed to a degree where it is barely noticeable. I won't bore you with all the techie nerdy stuff as to the exact resolutions that these games run at internally, as I can leave that up to Sparks to do in the editing room, but what I will say is that Monolith Soft's temporal upscaling solution did do wonders for these games, even pushing the resolution to a full 1080p when docked, and the character models are way more visually appealing, coming even close to PS4 level quality graphics. The biggest issues, however, lies with the console's internal memory, with the Switch having exactly 3 GB of usable RAM, whilst the Wii U has even less, which compared to the Xbox One S, the equivalent budget option at the time that was released in 2013, is considerably lower. The main takeaway from all of this is that it takes a lot of effort and many hours of hard work to get these open world games running on the Switch in the first place, let alone on the Wii U. And even then, most games with a seamless open world tend to perform pretty poorly anyway. That's all to say that a Xenoblade X remaster, remake, or even a straight up port to run on the Switch with higher quality textures and models, possibly including a future connected style expansion or something to go along with it, and still maintain a decent enough performance, is a bit of a stretch, at least in my books, and that's if you could even fit that onto a Switch in the first place, on its internal 32 GB of memory, and the Switch OLED is no better off either.
But why are we saying all of that? I haven't even touched on the second reason yet, but we talked about the technical side of things only, and yeah, that plays a big role. If you want a definitive edition on Switch, it won't be a definitive edition. If you up the game's resolution from 720p to 1080, added some higher quality models and textures in the environment, you may as well run into the same issues again, if not make it worse. The Switch is in its raw power not that much stronger than a Wii U. You have to consider that the home console got pushed into a tablet, which has also to run in handheld mode, where the console is even less powerful. I know, there are enough people saying that the game could run in 360p with 20 frames per second, because they don't care about graphics and whatnot, consuming everything that comes out of Nintendo. I mean, there are over 20 million people that have no self-respect whatsoever, but that's just my opinion. But no, honestly, how can you buy a game that looks unironically sometimes like a Nintendo 64 game that you emulate with a high resolution? People are approaching me saying that the game runs in full 1080p instead of the sad sub 720p for Xenoblade 2 and Definitive Edition, while Scarlet and Violet looking like some pre-alpha footage from some indie game, even though that is a shot towards indie games that they do not deserve. My point stands. In any case, you will run into the same issues again. Of course, you could go the way of the Definitive Edition that the first game received, going with a way more stylized anime approach to save on resources. Some may like it, some may hate it, but that's just a preference thing really. I know a lot of people that dislike the shift in art style, but let me hit you with another issue. Something that you probably also didn't have in mind is the music licensing. I got copyright claimed every single stream when I played Cross, even for the normal battle theme Black Tar. You know why? Because the original soundtrack was created by Hiroyuki Sawano, also considered as the Hans Zimmer of Japan, which was not cheap at all. And in general, the game's budget was not small at all. Maybe you remember from an interview with Monolith Soft that a port on Switch is not planned because of how expensive it would be to port it over, and exactly that is also part of the reason. He has worked on soundtracks for things like Attack on Titan, Gundam, The Seven Deadly Sins, and much more. And yeah, it wouldn't be cheap. And guess what? When the game came out, there were quite a few fans that hated the new direction for the series, specifically targeting the storytelling, music, and the gameplay itself. To the point where Monolith Soft was also pissed off in a way, and Takahashi himself stating that while Xenoblade Chronicles was a true story-driven JRPG, we took a rather different approach with Xenoblade Chronicles Cross. You could say it doesn't really feel like a typical JRPG. What really sets it apart from other JRPGs is that the game world, that planet Mira, is really vast. I've heard that some Japanese users who played Xenoblade Chronicles Cross said they enjoyed a more story-driven type of game. So if we have the opportunity to make another game in the series, I would like to make another typical JRPG style game like Xenoblade Chronicles again. And now for the final one that I touched upon earlier. Cut story elements like the world tree looking thing. Reused for 2. Which is also part of my theory, also mentioned before. It will all come together now. What if the original story for Cross is just source material for future games now? You see this ship here? Don't worry, it's part of the story trailer and the very first cutscene you see in the game. Looks an awful lot like Origin, right? Or this one special scale design in the artbook. Looks almost like Ouroboros, no? With this design looking a lot like the fused Ouroboros from Future Redeemed. Also, multiple alien races that never appear in the game, even though they were supposed to be really important for the original story. I mean, heck, do you see this crane here? Boom. This house? Boom. Heck, it even appeared in Elysium as low poly versions. There are also in-universe things happening that I wasn't paying full attention to during my playthrough, but after I've gotten told the connection, I was flabbergasted to say the least. Because I was also instantly seeing it. Things that also appeared in later installments and made me dig even deeper into what Cross was supposed to be. So yeah, it could still be exactly that. And with the Switch 2 on the horizon being a massive generational leap again, and Monolith Soft who wanted to show the world what they are capable of, as we have heard before, this could be the time to shine for Cross. This could be one of those games that will leave us with our mouths wide open. Higher quality textures, even better lighting, higher resolution, better frame rate, improved character models, faster loading times, and improved draw distance, all of that making the game a truly definitive edition. How it was intended to look, but only from a visual standpoint. So still disconnected from every other game. So wait, not exactly a definitive edition? But more like a 4K or enhanced version of the game? Which will definitely be Nintendo's big marketing thing for the next console, 4K capable and such, especially with DLSS being on board, thanks to Nvidia. But is that it for Cross? You know, I think you may be in luck.
Tetsuya Takahashi is someone who has always deeply cared about the stories he's written and told, especially when it came to Xenoblade X, rivaling the Marvel Cinematic Universe. That may be a slight exaggeration, but you get the point. It's baffling to think that everything was just merely thrown away, especially when it's on record that this is the most he's ever wrote for one of his stories. But what if we're looking at this from the wrong angle? We know that some of the concepts and ideas from X seem to have been reused in his more recent stories, but what if the word reused isn't exactly accurate? What if it's more like all of this has merely been foreshadowing? In 2020, the definitive edition of the first Xenoblade Chronicles was released with a graphical polish and a brand new epilogue story to top everything off, located on the Bionis shoulder, which was originally cut content for the original game back on the Wii. The data for this area is still contained within the files, and with the help of mods, you can even explore and adventure around this area. But the point is, this once forgotten piece of cut content was revitalized into an add-on for the game. Whilst I don't see any chance of X ever coming to the Switch, I still hold out hope for Nintendo's next generation of console, which will likely be releasing next year, coincidentally lining up with Xenoblade X's 10-year anniversary. And let's face it, this game would be the perfect opportunity to show off the new console's capabilities with a game like this. Team 2 at Monolith Soft, the guys who originally made Definitive Edition, also haven't revealed what they've been working on for the past 4 years. So there is reason to believe that this new project may be Xenoblade X, regardless of whether it's connected to the Klaus saga or not. Only time will tell as to the exact plans of our mastermind Takahashi and what he has in store for us, whether that be a new game to sink our teeth in, or a couple of fun spin-offs, or maybe, just maybe, a brand new trilogy.
You want to learn more about the story that wasn't part of Cross? Well, you are in luck. JBspherefreak has made a video where he goes into all the details and more in-depth for what was scrapped, even including the artbook, with a lot of very interesting details that could point to what will happen in the future of Xenoblade as a whole. You can find it in the description and at the end card of this video. And I also want to thank him so much for this very first collaboration on this channel. Was very happy with how it turned out.
I agree. Thank you so much for having me on for this, Sparks. I had a ton of fun making this video and hope all of you guys enjoyed it too. If you're interested in more Xenoblade X videos, make sure to head over to my channel after finishing this one, as me and Sparks have teamed up once again to take a deeper dive into the narrative that Takahashi originally wrote for this game. Although, I will warn you, spoilers ahead.
And I think that covers all of it, folks. What are your thoughts on all of that? Especially after watching this video. Let us know in the comments. Right then, more videos on Cross are in the works. You know exactly what kinds of videos. And if you like and subscribe, you will not be disappointed. I promise you that. Thank you guys once again for watching, and I'll see you very soon. Have a good one, folks. Auf Wiedersehen! Did you know that means something like see you later? Just like wir fliegen means we fly, or so nah, so fern means so close, so far? What's up with German words and Xeno stuff anyways? Is Takahashi secretly German or something?